Hi everyone, Giuseppe Gaiazzo here from Silence and Other Sounds, and today I'm here to introduce you our new Kontakt instrument called Zithergeist. Zithergeist is a collection of meticulously sampled acoustic and synthetic string instruments. We have created both playable tuned instruments and cinematic sound effects from a variety of instruments like miniharps, mandolin of unknown origins, and even from an Apulian Zither, a curious instrument from southern Italy about which I'll go into detail later. Synthetic strings have been generated by using realistic physical modeling techniques to let you get creative with timbres and tones. You can both use Zithergeist conventionally to play melody, chords, progression, but also as a versatile sound design instruments to create your own sound effects. Actually, Zithergeist both features instruments that are based on the aforementioned acoustic and synthetic string instruments, as a set of separate instruments that are solely focused on finely designed cinematic sound effects. The instrument in Zithergeist features up to 40 samples per note with up to 10 levels of velocity, 4 round robins, 3 articulation, and more than 600 high resolution cinematic sound effects and dozens of Kontakt snapshots for a total of 7 gigabytes of material. Currently we are running an introductory deal of $69 and still on $99, and we are also running a 50% discount on all our other cinematic libraries. So let's have a listen to the instruments that are featured in Zithergeist. The first one that I'm going to play for you is based on a melody harp, also known as a mini harp, that is a small version of a small-sized version of a dulcimer, and here's how it sounds like. So, as you can probably hear, there are two layers of sound. The first one that corresponds to the original acoustic notes of the instrument, of the mini harp, and then another layer of design sound effects, cinematic sound effects that are tuned to each note. And as I will show you, you can control a number of parameters of the sound effects layer from this screen here called Sound Effects Editor. And the sound effects are organized in 4 cyclical round robins, so that every time that you trigger the same note, a slightly different version of the same sample is triggered in order to create a more realistic and unpredictable feeling. However, if you want to just hear the clean sound of the original instruments, you just need to turn down the volume, and you'll have something like this. Okay, so the articulation that I'm playing right now is the basic plucked articulation, because this corresponds to the basically for this articulation we have recorded the notes with a guitar pick with a very clean straightforward pluck, but you can also access other 2 articulations which are that you can enable by using these 2 key switches here that are highlighted in red on the virtual keyboard. Actually, we have these other 2 articulations are called hammered and muted. If you press C1, you switch from the basic pluck articulation to the hammered one. That sounds like this. So you can probably deduce why we call it that. We call it hammered because it's actually been recorded by dropping a variety of metallic objects on the strings to create this sort of bouncing hammer effect, this sort of scattered effect for each note. And as you can hear, it's less clean, let's say, than the previous one, but it's been an intentional choice in order to create something more unusual and intricate. And you can also restore the initial articulation, the pluck articulation by the basic pluck articulation by pressing again C1, and so you go back to the initial one. The other articulation is called mute. We have recorded it by using object to suddenly stop the string and then obtain something like this. You can enable by pressing D1. Okay. You can restore the previous articulation by pressing D1 again. So this muted articulation can be pretty useful, as we'll see, with the arpeggiator in order to create cinematic ticking sequences that work really well in the realm of cinematic composition, but I'll go in detail on this one later. Let's get back to the sound effects layer. So let's increase again the volume. Okay, as we see from the sound effects editor, we have a number of controls. First of all, volume. Then we can also change the pitch of the sound effects layer with a 1 octave step, so that the samples are always in tune with the corresponding note. So for example, if you want to create something darker, I might decrease the octave to -1, and we would have something like this. Sounds really dark. So let's restore the original values for the pitch. And then on the right side we have an LFO for the sound effects layer. I have control on the rate of the LFO that goes from 4 to 32, and to the amount of the LFO and the shape as well. So for example, if we increase the amount and we want to create something more rhythmical, maybe let's decrease the BPM a little bit. So you can control the sound effects layer in a variety of ways and come up always with something different. Okay, let's have a look at these other screens here. And this one is a string editor that includes 3 submodules: the unison submodule, the banding module, and the transient module. So let's start to see the unison. Basically, it allows you to trigger simultaneously multiple notes when we hit a note from the virtual keyboard. So you can combine from 1 to 8 notes, and this can be used, for example, if I set the number of simultaneous notes to 5, it sounds a little bit stiffer, a little bit bigger. You can also control the time gap between the simultaneous note and create this sort of strumming effect. You can also control the mutual tuning between the multiple simultaneous notes, and also their position, let's say, within the stereo image, in order to spread them out in the stereo image. So as you can hear, this module allows you to drastically alter the initial sounds and to come up with a variety of combinations. So you can also create something like that sounds like a droning synthetic pad by maybe decreasing the gap and working on the value of the detune. Okay, let's restore the default values. So to 1 string again. Let's see the banding module, which, as the name suggests, allows you to to perform a pitch bending on the on each individual note, and you have control on the amount of the pitch bend and its time length. Which creates this sort of drunk effect that can be pretty useful to create for horror melodies, for example, eerie atmospheres. And then we have this transient module that basically allows you to control the attack, let's say to soften or to increase the attack and the sustain of the notes. For example, if we increase the attack and we drastically decrease the sustain, we have some sort of muted effect. Or maybe you might want to do exactly the opposite, to decrease the attack a little bit and increase the sustain. I would like to highlight that these modules, the sound effects module, the sound effects editor, the string editor, and as we will see also the harp editor, they work seamlessly, they work independently from the current articulation. Now we are working with the pluck articulation, but the same thing would be also for the hammered and the mute articulation. In the string editor, we also have this switch here that is called random bounce, that basically randomly switches the articulation from pluck to hammered. So this also sounds really creepy and be pretty useful to create unpredictable, unexpectable result when playing also simple melodies. Okay. Let's go now to the arpeggiator editor. As the name suggests, here you have this table where you can structure, let's say, your sequence, your arpeggiated sequence, and each one of these bars here controls the velocity of the note within the sequence. So if we use this switch to activate the arpeggiator, we have okay. I apologize for my poor playing skills, but unfortunately I'm not the pianist. I hope that it's enough to demonstrate you the instrument. So let's have a look at the other controls that we have here in the arpeggiator screen. We have control on the number of steps of the arpeggiator that goes from 2 up to 32. We can also control how we want our sequence to be triggered. Well, the order of the note within the sequence. We can we have a selection of choices here. For example, as played arpeggiates the note in the same order that we play them from the keyboard. Up arpeggiates the notes in the from the lowest one to the highest one. Vice versa for down. Then we have up and down and down and up. I see here with the repeat knob we can control how many times a single note is repeated within the sequence. We can control the resolution of the arpeggiator from 128 to 1 bar. The swing is to create some nice effect. Okay. And then we have octave that basically controls the octave switch of the same note within the sequence. So for example, if we set octave to 1 and I just press F2, so during the sequence the note switches from the basic octave to the following one. Okay. Oh, well, we also have this switch here called SFX off. Now if we restore the volume of the sound effects, when this switch is enabled, basically the sound effects are not arpeggiated during the sequence. We only have them triggered when we play the notes. here, the sound effects are not structured within the repeated sequence. However, if you want them to follow the arpeggio of the notes, we have to deactivate, to turn off this switch, and we have something like this. Okay. Finally, we have this more convolution module, which is a master sound effects that basically affect all the sound effects and the notes the same way. And this is obviously based on the convolution effect in Kontakt. And convolution is very briefly a quite complex mathematical process that can be very useful in musical application, and I might describe it as very useful to filter one sound within one other. Convolution is very commonly used to reproduce, to capture, let's say, the real reverberation of acoustic environments, for example, rooms, halls, churches, cathedrals. But also to capture the reverberation of hardware devices, like, for example, spring reverbs or digital reverbs. However, by experimenting a little bit with the impulse responses with the convolution samples, it is possible to use convolution as a very powerful sound design tool and get creative with it. And so the so-called impulse responses that are included in Zithergeist fall under this umbrella. They are not, let's say, pictures of reverbs of real environments, but they are basically found sounds of any sort. We have from sound of hot liquid bars to old machinery to broken tape machines, and they can be very, very interesting to color the sound in a variety of ways. In particular, you have more than 120 impulse responses. They are divided in two categories: textural and rhythmical. The textural ones are more atmospheric long samples that mimic more or less the effect of a reverb, whereas the rhythmic ones, as the name suggests, are more rhythmical based, and they can be very useful to sort of embed some rhythmical oddities and subtleties in your sounds and find something interesting and creative. So let's explore some of the textural impulse responses. For example, this one, Metal's Well. Let's deactivate the arpeggiator. Let's turn down the volume of the sound effects a little bit. That's pretty interesting because it creates this sort of background ethereal layer that I really like. I mean, it's very interesting and it's very powerful to color the sound and come up with something different. Let's try another one. For example, this one. This one is really nice. Let's try another one just to give you a wider idea. Let's have a look now at the rhythmical convolutions. Try this one. You have this sort of thickened rhythm, the rhythm that sort of lays in background that can be used, can give you ideas, rhythmical ideas, to create new patterns, new arrangements, and new melodies. Let's try some other ones. For example, this one. very interesting. Try another one, this one. Okay, so let's have a look in detail to all the commands that we have here in the convolution. We have a pre-delay for the effect. Then we have this knob here that is called sides. Well, in order to explain what this really is, I should go a little bit more in detail about how the convolution module in Kontakt works. Basically, as you change the value of this knob, Kontakt stretches up or down the convolution sample without changing its pitch. So changing the side means basically applying a non-linear time stretch to the sample. So the minimum value of sides corresponds to a stretched up sample, whereas the maximum value to stretch down the sample. So just to listen, let's use this sample here. So with the minimum value of sides, it accelerates. If we do the opposite on the other way around, so you might want to experiment with sides in order to match the rhythm of the convolution sample with the tempo of your song in order to create interesting rhythmic stuff. Then we have these two knobs here, high pass filter and low pass filter, that are actually two filters that are applied to the inputs responses. This can be pretty useful because when you filter one sound within one other, you might have some unknown frequencies, resonant frequencies, and you can use this filter to get rid of the frequencies that you do not want, and have the kind of reverberation between quotation mark that fits most for your sounds. And then here we have the wet knob to control the amount of the effect. So I've tried to summarize very briefly all the controls that you have in these instruments. Now I would like to play you some of the snapshots for the mini harp or melody harp. Each one of the instruments comes with a number of snapshots, which are basically presets. And in order to use them, you need to locate the snapshot folder within the Zithergeist folder and drag and drop them the corresponding snapshot on the user interface. I won't spend too many words about why it's necessary to do it manually and not directly here from the snapshot menu, but if you are curious, you can download the manual of Zithergeist from the web page, where this aspect will be explained in detail. So let's try just some of the snapshots for the melody harp in order to give you a wider idea of all the sounds in Zithergeist. Okay, let's try something a little bit more nasty. Okay, this one was similar to the previous one that we have tried. As well. Also, I would like to show you the rhythmical based snapshots that work really well with the music articulation. This can be pretty useful to create clock-like sequences, exogenous rhythmical sequences. Let's also try this one, that clock. Let's try it with the muted articulation as well. This one is nice as well. It's this one. Okay. You have plenty of other snapshots, but I will stop here for this instrument, and now I will introduce you a new one that is called Unknown Mandolin. This is basically an old instrument that we found around. We were not able to discover its real name, neither its origin, so that's the reason why we call it Unknown Mandolin in the instrument. Basically, the instrument interface is identical. You have the same control, the same function. So I will directly play you some of the snapshots. Okay, I start from the basic one. So as you can hear, there are a lot of weird sounds, a lot of strange harmonics. This is because actually when we found this instrument, it was in very bad shape, but rather than sort of fixing it and obtain a more canonical sound, we decided to keep it as it was and to explore all the sonic possibilities from this old instrument in not very good shape. So as you can hear, it's a pretty rhythmical instrument. It works really well when you create rhythms, you create something that is very rhythmic based. So let's explore some of the, also in this case you have the true articulation, the hammered articulation. Okay, also the muted one. Okay, now let's have a listen to the snapshots. Also in this case you have this layer of sound effects which are different from the previous instrument. Each instrument has its own layer of sound effects. Let's listen to something more, something more rhythmic based. Okay, this one was pretty interesting. Let's listen to this one. Let's try that with it also with the muted articulation. Interesting. Let's try also this one. pretty experimental. Oops. So as you can hear, you can easily move from let's say, conventional instrument that can be played note by note to a versatile sound design effect by combining the notes with the corresponding sound effects, and by adjusting all the parameters that we have seen in all the three editors. It's really easy to turn a conventional playable instruments in a sound design effect. So this is the basic idea behind this sample library. Now I'll pass to describe the synthetic string instruments. Also in this case they are the interface is identical to the previous one, with the only difference that these synthetic string Kontakt instruments are only feature two articulation rather than three. They only feature the block articulation and the hammered one. This synthetic string has been created with a variety of realistic physical modeling technique. We aim to create actually a realistic string sound, but it also features some sort of oddities that are not likely to be listened in a real instrument. So let's say to blur a little bit the line between the acoustic realm and the digital realm. And this one is actually called Cotton Attack because we wanted to mimic the sounds of a string that is played with a felt mallet. Okay. So as I said, the interface is the same one. So also in this case, I will play you some of the presets, of the snapshots. Okay. So this one. This one was pretty creepy. Okay. Just let's give it a listen to. I activate the random bounce switch in order to listen also to the sorry, to the hammered articulation. Okay. Another instrument in the realm of synthetic strings that we have is called metal vowel. Also in this case I play you some of the snapshots. Let's try with this one. So as you can hear for all these instruments, both acoustic and synthetic, by enabling the sound effects layer, by increasing the volume and playing with it in a variety of way, you instantly get everything creepy. So this instrument can be pretty interesting and useful for cinematic composition, where you want to blur the line between playing melodies and creating sound effects. Okay, if you pay attention to a lot of trailer music, is not particularly articulated from the perspective of the complexity of the melody, of the harmony, but it relies more on the identity of the sounds. And here with this instrument, even if you play something really simple, by playing with the sound effects and by manipulating the parameters that we have seen, you immediately come up with something interesting that can spark ideas, that can be inspiring. Another instrument that we have is called nylon string, because we have tried actually to replicate the sound of a nylon string. Play some of the presets of the snapshot. This is really nice. Play also this one. Okay. As I said at the beginning of this video, we also have a separate set in Zithergeist. Zithergeist also features a separate set of Kontakt instruments that are solely focused on the cinematic sound effects. And these instruments are actually completely different from the ones that we have seen so far. The interface is different, the way the instruments work is completely different, and as I say, they are based on the high-resolution cinematic samples that are featured in the library. They are actually different from the one that we have used as a layer here. They are completely different, and they are more in the style of our previous library, if you are familiar with our previous releases. So I'll play some of the sounds of the cinematic samples that are featured here. So as you can hear, all of these cinematic sound effects are basically they're based on recording of the same string instruments that we have used to create the previous Kontakt instruments. And basically these Kontakt instruments here allow you to individually control all of these parameters that you see here in this interface for each of the sample. So that means that for each one of the samples, you can independently control pitch, volume, filter, LFO, and envelope. As you can hear, every time that you play one of these samples from the virtual keyboard, the interface is updated to the current waveform and to the current values of, as I said, of envelope and all the other parameters. Just as an example, okay, I'm playing now C3. Let's close the filter a little bit, low pass filter, and we'll decrease the pitch. But then if I play another sample, you can set individually all the other values, for example. So this is pretty convenient because it gives you plenty of endless possibilities of combining the sample, of playing them against each other with a different setting for each one of them. We have actually 8 different instrumental sound effects, so really plenty of possibilities. Just let's have a slight closer look of all the controls that we find here features in the instruments. We have a volume envelope, so attack, hold, decay, sustain, and release. Then we can also adjust the sample offset for each one of the samples. Okay. Then we have a low pass, high pass filter resolution, and then an LFO section here that is just below this sort of line. You can set individually if you want the LFO to be applied to the low pass filter or to the high pass filter. You can set the rate of the LFO that goes from 8 to 64, the amount, and the shape. And once again, you can set all of these parameters that are in the upper part of the interface independently for each sample. And then we have the convolution module, sorry, that is basically the same of the instruments that we have previously seen. So I won't go in detail here. Okay, it's been a pretty long one. I hope that I have covered everything that is in Zithergeist. But before ending this video, I would like to play for you another instrument that is called pasta cutter guitar. As you maybe remember at the beginning of this video, I mentioned among the instruments that we have sampled an Apulian Zither, and basically this is traditionally not a musical instrument. This is called pasta cutter guitar because traditionally this instrument was used to cut filaments of pasta by pressing a loaf of dough against a steep sequence of strings, metallic strings that were mounted on a wooden frame. Yeah, this is the instrument that we have sampled, and it is actually officially named pasta cutter guitar, but we have changed its name in the Apulian Zither from the Apulia, the region of southern Italy where we have found it, and we have decided to approach it in a slightly different way and use it as a sound design tool, and we have sampled it in a variety of ways, and most of the sound effects that you find in this set of Kontakt instruments are based on the Apulian Zither or pasta cutter guitar, and we have played it in a variety of ways by strumming it, for example, for this specific instrument. Okay, but we have also experimented with bows, for example. So, a lot of sounds. As I already said, there are actually more than 500 design sounds that are organized in this instrument, so plenty of material. Last but not least, you have also 2 instruments of source sounds, so the original recording of Apulian Zither and mandolin and melody harp that we used to create these sound effects. So so a lot of material here as well. Okay guys, as I say, this has been a pretty long one. I think that I have covered everything, and I hope that this video helped you to make your mind about all the functionalities and the sounds that are featured in Zithergeist. I would like to say a few other important things. The first one is that all the sounds in Zithergeist, from the notes to the layered sound effects to the design sound effects to the impulse responses, are also accessible outside of Kontakt. You just need to browse within the Zithergeist folder and you can use the samples as you want. In particular, for the inputs responses, this can be pretty convenient because you can use them in another convolution reverb plugin, for example, Reflector in Guitar Rig, and you experiment with them also outside of this specific instrument. Another very important thing is that in order to play the instruments, all the ones that we have seen, so that we have showed you so far, you need the full version of Kontakt. Sometimes I receive emails from a customer that purchase our libraries that ask me why the instruments go in demo mode and then close. That's because they are trying to use them with Kontakt Play, which is the free version of Kontakt, let's say. But all of our libraries, this one included, needed the full version of Kontakt. So have a careful read really carefully the specs from the web page to see if if you actually own the full version of Kontakt and not just the free version of Kontakt Play. Something else. So yeah, another thing that I mentioned is that you can download the manuals for free from the web page. That is something that I really encourage you to do, because it goes in details in many other aspects of the instruments. Otherwise I should have done a 3 hours video, which is really not the case to do. So yeah, I think that's all. So guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video demo, that you enjoyed the sounds and the instruments, and thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye.